Gong hei fa choi, everybody. Some of you might be familiar with this phrase that is essentially wishing others increasing happiness and wealth in the new year. Chinese New Year is this upcoming Sunday, January 22nd, and while you might have heard me say before that my mother is from Malaysia, her mother, or my grandmother, is Chinese, and the holiday for the Lunar New Year is one that my mom's side of the family has celebrated for pretty much as long as I can remember. Last year, before I started doing stuff on YouTube, I drew 3 of my original characters celebrating Chinese New Year together: Demonica, Minamika, and of course, one you might recognize, Inkashti. I thought it would be a fun drawing prompt to do another Chinese New Year celebratory drawing with a new trio. And you know I had to pick my most recent D&D characters, Merilith, Ezra, and Isegwin. This drawing is definitely more of a drawing from the heart and not a drawing that I had a lot of plans for. The only thing I was sure about is that I wanted Ezra to be wearing one of these heads as seen in lion dances. Lion dances are these very entertaining and beautifully coordinated dances that have usually 2 people wearing this long sort of costume where one person is the head and the front 2 legs and the other person is the back and the back 2 legs. These performers will have a routine that varies anywhere from being a more comedic routine to these impressive jumps and acrobatics on very high poles. I've only seen a few of these lion dances in person myself, and those were put on by the local community and held in a school gym in a very small town that I mostly grew up in. However, it still continues to be one of the most memorable events of the Chinese New Year celebrations I experienced growing up. That and maybe trying durian for the first time. Now, besides the lion head, I decided to give Merilith and Isegwin something to hold as well. So Merilith gets an ang pao and Isegwin gets a rabbit. Ang pao is basically a red envelope given on a holiday that contains some amount of money, and in my family the ang pao is typically given to unmarried members of the family, mostly the children. I brought my poor husband, at the time boyfriend, to a Chinese New Year event pretty early on in our relationship, and now, my husband is a very tall, blonde-haired, blue-eyed American man, and almost everyone on my mom's side of the family is pretty short with darker hair and features. Needless to say, he was very bewildered at an event where pretty much everyone spoke in Malaysian, and then even more so bewildered when almost complete strangers came up to him to give him little red envelopes of money, which I did not think to give him any warning about in advance, and he felt extremely guilty for having received ang pao just for being present. Hopefully he feels less guilty now that we're married and no longer recipients of ang pao, and instead have small nieces and nephews to pass the tradition on to. As for why Isegwin is holding a rabbit, each year is assigned to one of 12 animals in the Chinese zodiac. 2023 is the year of the rabbit, which happens to be the zodiac of the year I was born in, 1999. Rabbits in Chinese culture are a symbol of peace, longevity, and prosperity, and the prediction is that 2023 will be a year of hope. So I hope that this year will bring some good things our way. I myself am not particularly invested when it comes to astrology or zodiacs, but I do enjoy checking some of the traits out and seeing whether they line up or not. You might have noticed that I'm doing something a little different than what I've been doing lately. Instead of going straight to blocking in colors, I'm going over and resketching in a dark blue to define some of the details. I actually didn't plan on going as detailed and painterly as my usual style, and for a long time was considering doing some nice clean line art, which I haven't done on a render like this in a while. However, and sorry if I got anyone's hopes up, I decided to go with this sketch layer to act as some, air quotes, line art instead, and rely on my painterly style a little bit more, because I really wanted a soft look and I don't quite have the nice calligraphy and textured look in my line art that I wanted for this particular drawing. Also, I know Merilith, Ezra, and Isegwin have a bit more of a height difference than this picture might imply, but let's just pretend that there are various boxes on which Isegwin can stand. Now, while I dress these characters up in some thematic clothing, let's talk about some of my own hypocrisy. Many of you have probably seen me design characters with clothing and armor inspired from many different places in various combinations of fantasy, traditional, and modern. While I myself have a really hard time feeling like I can wear clothing from my own family's cultures because I don't have the right body type, or I don't look Polish enough, or not Malaysian enough, or what have you other cultures that I want to connect with. A friend of mine pointed out that I was letting an internalized expectation of what people should look like dictate the way I connected with my own cultures, which is, to say the least, not ideal. So whether it's in cosplay or sewing more traditional clothing or just participating in my family's culture without feeling like I need to earn the right to be a part of it, I hope I embrace a more forgiving view of myself in those lights. And I don't wonder, because I'm sure that there are a lot of other first-gen Americans or mixed kids who just don't feel like they blend in or stand out anywhere, who feel like the odd one out at a gathering or the odd one out at an Asian market or just in any way. I don't really have good advice for how to slowly step out of that mindset either, because we're all just learning, I guess, which is fine. Learning is a good thing. Growth is a great thing. I hope it brings you comfort that I am on this slowly progressing journey with you, whatever it is you're trying to embrace about yourself, cultural or otherwise. Back to art and things. As per usual, I put in the flats, but as per unusual, I actually work on a couple different layers for this piece. While I do eventually merge it all down together, for a lot of the coloring and rendering process, I have the lion head on a different layer from the clothing, which is on a different layer from their skin and hair. That was because in this piece, I had a lot more item layering than usual, and I'm not just talking about fabrics. Layers are a nice way to get the nice clean edges and separation between items. With my more soft painting style, I usually don't look for harsh separations. However, layers can be extremely convenient for when you're trying to shade objects that are under a lot of other objects, or if you're trying to work out the details of something but you're not quite committed to the look or color of things. As you can see, I'm not super committed to the colors of Marilit's outfit, so I do a bit of selecting and try a few different shades on before picking one. Working with so many reds can be a bit of a struggle since you end up having to balance saturation and values instead of separate colors. And doing a value study, but in mostly reds instead of black and white, was definitely a challenge for me. But I really like the unified look at the end result, and besides, this year I was working with only one character that is primarily red. Last year, I had 2 red characters that I had to deal with. Also, oops at the way I positioned Marilit's hand. She was supposed to be holding the Ang Pao between her fingers, but now that it's rendered, it kind of just looks like she's flipping people off. Which, I mean, on brand, but still, oops. This composition makes for a very fun scenario in my head where Isegwin and Ezra sneak Marilith off to festivals in an attempt to take her mind off of the heavy work that she has to deal with in the Ouroboros family. The events certainly are full of trying tons of food, getting all the little trinkets and party poppers that they can carry, and of course, plenty of hijinks and shenanigans that definitely include all of them coming home with their pockets absolutely full of bottle rockets or snaps, or whatever thematic festival equivalent. My favorite part of this drawing is, since I wasn't planning on drawing the jawbone headpiece that Ezra has in her original render, I get to draw the little tufts of hair that are in front of her ears, which is super exciting. It was a part of the last drawing that I really was devastated about covering up, and in this drawing I got to render them in all their fluffy goodness. Now, my least favorite part of this drawing is literally every other strand of hair featured in this drawing, and there's a lot. And also PSA, just because I'm drawing a character holding a rabbit, I do not condone the purchase of animals for use as decoration or returnable seasonal gifts, which I feel like should be common knowledge at this point, but I just wanted to cover it because I feel like every year I hear of someone buying and mistreating a fish or a rabbit or other such animals, or returning them after a couple of days because they didn't realize they were buying into a long-term commitment, or they bought the creature just for the aesthetic. Isegwin encourages the responsible care of animals, and this rabbit is either going to be returned to his owner, or the rabbit is going to become Isegwin's very spoiled crime-fighting sidekick. To be determined. Although, the imagery of Isegwin being all rough and tough and then having a soft spot for a little rabbit that she dotes on is pretty cute. I have to admit, lately it's been a little difficult to motivate myself to work on my campaign book, partially because I overloaded myself with D&D content and am taking a step back just so I can use my brain for other things, and then again partially because of all the hubbub going around with the Open Gaming License, or OGL, for D&D. If you're not sure what the OGL situation is, I will link Ginny D's video about it in the caption for your convenience, but basically the situation is that Wizards of the Coast wants to make changes to a license that has previously allowed third-party creators to create new material that builds upon the base game of D&D. Now, from what it looks like and what Wizards has said, the new OGL is intended to affect much larger companies, so perhaps me being a solo and a very small new creator, it won't really have a major impact on my campaign book writing process. However, it's hard to say that everyone won't experience some sort of impact, whether that's loss of printing rights or loss of new gaming material. And also at this point in time, we really know nothing about how Wizards intends to move forward. Don't take my word for this. I don't feel at all that I am a credible or even well-informed enough source to be relaying this information, and there are many creators out there who have voiced their thoughts. As I said earlier, Ginny D makes a really nice concise video where she references other informative videos to help you figure out what you're looking for and the information you need regarding the OGL situation. As for my plans for my campaign book and Vessel Doll and all these beautiful characters, including Marilith, Ezra, and Isegwyn, all I can say is only time will tell. Even if I'm early enough along in the channel building and book writing process that the OGL changes don't affect my projects, I would hate to see the creators I love and admire lose a lot of what they worked really hard to build. And it might have an impact on the direction I take this channel in the future. All that scary stuff being said, again, only time will tell, and I'm very sorry if you came to my channel to avoid the discussion of the whole thing, but as someone who is in the process of trying to create and distribute a supplementary book, it's something I've been trying to keep an eye on. And I don't want to bash anyone for continuing to use D&D 5e. I mean, it's the only TTRPG system that I know how to use right now, and I will continue working on the book for my own reference purposes. And as far as right now, I still plan to use this channel as a creative outlet to share my world building process, and you will get to see more characters and backstories and landscapes being drawn. But that's pretty much all I can say with certainty for now, and I hope you all can bear with me for having talked about it. Exhausting. Let's talk about something else now. You might have seen me working on Marilith's face earlier, and since this drawing of her mostly emphasizes her face, I got to render the gums and scars around her teeth a lot better than I did in the original drawing. Now, I'm not great or experienced at drawing teeth that have been exposed, and I should probably think a little bit more about the bone structure of how that would work, but I did include some little scarring up her cheeks and down her jaw to indicate that it was a sudden rupture of teeth, and that she wasn't born with it. I think if I ever do another close-up of Marilith, I would like to approach that again, maybe draw the teeth protruding a little more, and also do a little bit more scarring where the flesh and gums would have healed over. But for the time being, it was a fun little thought and art exercise. I really like the way I drew the fluffy parts on the lion head. I used an oval marker brush and just did a few layers of varying color. I think it's simple, but gets the correct look across very effectively. And in general, I'm just very pleased with how the lion came out. I was intimidated because typically the costumes are very detailed and beautiful, and I wasn't looking forward to having such a detail-heavy piece, especially since this is something I just wanted to work on for fun. Nonetheless, I think it turned out beautifully. Even with how much I simplified the piece, sometimes less really is more. I do my usual last minute color adjustment, bringing out the redder reds and adding some color dodge to highlight certain areas with orange. I think it brings the whole image together and gives it a nice warm glow. I also add a sort of rim lighting outline thing to make the subject matter pop, and last but not least, a tiny little signature to hopefully subtly blend in with the designs on the Ang Pao envelope. And here's the final product. I am in love with this trio. I hope you are all as in love with them as I am. I love being able to see how my art has progressed over the years, and I love that I have new characters to keep making a ridiculous amount of fan art for. Fret not, Inkashti fans, I have not forgotten her already. I'm not going to end this video with any complaints just because I kind of feel like I should try to be a little more optimistic in a time when things are not ideal for it seems like everyone. So let me know some happy thoughts in the comments. I would love to hear about any of your family holidays or traditions, if you're celebrating the Lunar New Year in any way yourself, or if you want to write about a similar experience to mine, whether that's in regards to D&D or growing up first generation American or mixed kid or whatever. I have a lovely community of people in the comments, and I know we're all trying to do our best and support each other in things. And I am happy to hear anything that you guys have to say. So all I have left to say is thank you, keep learning, gong hei fa choi, and see you next week. Or not. Who knows? Not me.